Greetings, bonjour, buenos dias, habari gani, konnichiwa. Welcome to the annual celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at Illinois Wesleyan University. Though we had to move from an in-person day of events to a shortened virtual experience, we still have a thought-provoking program for you. This year, our theme is the urgency of now. You may be wondering, just what is the urgency and why now? Well, as we reflect on Dr. King's work during the civil rights movement, we remember that there was a sense of urgency in the country among people who were fighting for social justice, equity, and inclusion. Segregation was still the law of the land. Racially charged attitudes and behaviors were mounting. Housing discrimination prevented Black and Brown citizens from owning homes or living in certain neighborhoods. And voter suppression was prohibiting Black Americans from fully exercising their rights as citizens. America was very much divided into Black and white, rich and poor. Yet, Dr. King appealed to people of all colors, races, and religions to work together for liberty and justice for all. He urged all Americans to stop focusing on superficial differences and embrace our similarities as a human race. Dr. King knew that this was not an easy task. He cautioned America that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but through continuous struggle. More than 50 years have passed since the Civil Rights Act was signed, and America has made progress. Yet, we continue to struggle today with issues that were prevalent during that time. Not only do we have to change the laws, we have to change the mindsets of people. Then we can effectuate equity, inclusion, and social justice. As Dr. King asserted, a social movement that only moves people is merely a revolt. A movement that changes both people and institutions is a revolution. Today, in 2022, in the midst of a pandemic that has taken the lives of nearly 1 million Americans and millions of people all over the globe, we feel a sense of urgency to correct issues that disproportionately affect people of color and the working class. Poverty and economic injustice, the Poor People's Campaign, labor rights, racial inequity, inequality, and voter suppression are still pressing issues. Now is the time to not only talk about the issues, but to correct them. These issues ultimately affect all of us, so we all have to work together to solve them. This is the urgency of now. Our program for today commemorates Dr. King to honor and advance his legacy of peace, justice, and equality for all. We hope that it will elucidate the importance of our roles as faculty and staff in advancing equity, inclusion, and racial healing in American society. And we hope that everyone understands that this struggle is an ongoing process for the benefit of our whole society. Namaste. Shalom. Peace.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dixon-Montgomery. We'll now hear some greetings and remarks from President Nugent.
Thank you. And I want to offer my thanks as well to Professor Dixon-Montgomery. Thanks so much for your very timely and important remarks. I find, not surprisingly, that as each of us was asked to reflect on this day, my thoughts are very much along the same lines as yours. Today, we take time out of our normal day-to-day routine to honor a great man whose mission and work were cut short by an assassin's bullet more than 50 years ago. That was a very tumultuous, difficult, and violent time in our nation's history. Those of my generation remember very vividly the assassination not only of Reverend King, but also of John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. In that time of violence at home, we were also engaged in violence abroad in the disastrous and futile Vietnam War. Today, we remember Martin Luther King largely for the extraordinary contribution he made to ending many official practices of segregation in this country. Of course, we now know that was just one step on a long, long road. And we continue to follow in his footsteps today, as we continue with renewed energy to strive toward the equity that this nation promises, but has never yet achieved. But King's legacy is even larger than what he was able to accomplish in those marches in Selma or from that jail cell in Birmingham. Martin Luther King was a visionary, and his vision, though not yet achieved, included the dream of a world without war and a world without poverty. King opposed the Vietnam War. He said, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more on military expense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." And yet, after Vietnam, this nation went into Afghanistan. King stood against poverty. At the time of his death in 1968, he was in Memphis to support a strike by sanitation workers. This was part of the Poor People's Campaign that he had launched in 1967 in that effort to address economic inequality and social injustice. And yet, today, economic inequality in this country has reached levels far beyond what King knew in his time. Martin Luther King was a visionary, seeing more clearly and farther than many of his era, calling out and fighting injustice. Yes, especially for his Black brothers and sisters, but for all of humanity. While he was a man of peace who followed Gandhi's doctrine of nonviolence and was even awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, he was also a fighter for freedom, for justice, for equality. He is one of whom we can truly say that he comforted the disturbed and disturbed the comfortable. As we honor his memory on this day, we need to remember that, remember his courage and tenacity, but we also need to recognize and remember his incredible hope, even in the face of resistance and violence. We recall many stirring words of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. But perhaps the words we must cling to most to foster our own hope, even in times that can discourage hope, are, "We shall overcome, because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." King was visionary in so many ways that have proven true in our own day. May these powerful words also be proven true. Thank you.
President Nugent, we thank you for those kind words. We appreciate you. We'll now have some remarks and greetings from our student leader, Nile Doucette.
Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Good morning, my name is Nile Doucette, and I am a sophomore studying health promotion and fitness management. On behalf of my fellow peers here at Illinois Wesleyan University, I welcome you to this year's MLK celebration. This year's theme, The Urgency of Now, helps us all to recognize and push for change related to cultural understanding, cultural representation, and the need for training and development in the areas of equity and inclusion on our campus. It is also a time for us to reflect on the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as reflecting on our practice of civil rights. My hope is that you will intently listen to the inspiring words of our speaker and leave with a renewed state of mind as we all continue to act urgently for change on our campus community and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Nile. Thank you. And now, introduction to our speaker, our Director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Charlotte Brown Ajayi.
Thank you so much, and good morning again, everyone. It is my absolute honor to introduce our keynote speaker for today's MLK celebration, Coach Chris Schumacher, or Coach Schu, as he's fondly called. Chris Schumacher has been the head men's and women's track and field coach at Illinois Wesleyan since 1997, and in the summer of 2021, was promoted to Director of Track and Field. Through May of 2021, under Coach Schumacher's direction, our teams have produced 291 All-Americans, including 3 relay teams and 18 individual national champions. In addition to winning 4 NCAA championships under Coach Schumacher's leadership, the women's teams have finished in the top 20 nationally on numerous occasions. Coach Schumacher's men's teams have also yielded 6 national finishes, and the IWU men have the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin, or CCIW, record in the 4x4 relay. Our track and field staff have been voted CCIW Staff of the Year several times, and Coach Schumacher was named Division III Coach of the Year by the U.S. Track and Field and Cross Country Coaches Association in 2008, 2010, and 2016. He was also named Midwest Region Coach of the Year a half dozen times. Coach Schumacher is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, where he was an All-American for 3 years in track and field, competing on teams that won 3 national championships. He was also a 4-year letter winner in football and played on 2 national championship games. Coach Schumacher has earned a master's degree in physical education in 1992 at Wisconsin-La Crosse, was promoted to Associate Professor of Physical Education at Illinois Wesleyan in February of 2003, and full professor in 2013. In the fall of 2006, he was inducted into the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse Wall of Fame, an award that honors those individuals who have displayed exceptional ability while on campus and since graduation. In the fall of 2002, Coach Schumacher earned the UW La Crosse Multicultural Alumni Award, which is given to multicultural graduates who have achieved distinction in their field. When I told Chris, someone I have the honor of calling a friend, that I would be introducing him, and I asked him for information he would like to share, he directed me to his bio where I could get all of this amazing information about him. But what he specifically told me is that he wanted people to know that he was in his 25th year at Illinois Wesleyan. He wanted us to know that his phenomenal wife, Amy, teaches 4th grade at Thomas Metcalf Laboratory School in Normal. He wanted us to know that his daughter, Kiana, is a graduate of Illinois Wesleyan with a degree in accounting, and his son, Keandre, is a current student studying world religion. More than anything, Chris is a family man, a true friend, and a dedicated member of the Illinois Wesleyan community. So without further ado, please let's welcome our friend, Coach Chris Schumacher, our keynote speaker.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Charla. Thank you, Chaplain. Thank you, Prince, President Nugent, Jessie, and Nile for your opening remarks. Thank you, IWU, for this incredibly humbling opportunity. A lot of people also reached out to me last week and even this morning, wishing me words of encouragement, and it means a lot to me. It's an important day, but the urgency of now is always an important day.
Coach, just so you know, the video is not showing for us yet,
Okay,
even though we practiced an hour before. There we
that's
go.
all right. I think we got it. Thank you.
Brothers and sisters, listen, listen, listen. I swear we'll never find a way to where we're going. All alone, don't take your eyes off the road.
I want to share a few opening remarks before I get on with my presentation, and I have it here for you guys to read along with me, but we'll never find a way to where we're going on our own. Don't take your eyes off the road. That was from Leslie Odom Jr.'s song, Speak Now, from the movie One Night in Miami, about Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, and Jim Brown and their roles during the Civil Rights Movement 60 years ago. Where are we going? It can be easy to live sheltered by the bubble of our own spaces in higher education, especially on a small campus, in a small community, to be blind or ignore how far we have to go with diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the key to making DEI work is an organization's willingness to grow, which provides access. It's hard. Many aren't ready to do the work. My story is about access to opportunity and how it's so vital on the road to equity. In sharing my story today, I didn't know most of the critical parts that led to where I am here until I was 45. Struggles my family went through in a fight for equality before I was adopted. It's been 158 years since Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, but the history behind Lincoln is highly complex. Many of you have asked and researched if he was a racist, but the better question to ask when seeking positive change is this: how was Lincoln able to come to a healing place in his mind despite the context of the times? Like Malcolm X, Lincoln was able to own his shortcomings, admit he was wrong, and evolve as a deep thinking human being in the face of immeasurable scrutiny. Malcolm X preached Black separatism, but later changed his views to embrace the common humanity of all people. As you watch my story unfold today, I ask that you try to put yourself in the shoes of another person, not just to empathize, but to think critically about your own life and gather a historical perspective of who you are. How have you benefited from the foundation of this country? How can you continue to evolve to make the urgency of now closer to a reality of now? So with that, here is a glimpse of my world in black and white.
Join me for an extraordinary journey back in time to get a glimpse of a world seen through my mind's eye of living in a white society while experiencing it in the skin of the only person of color in my community. My life is an experiential lens of love from a family who chose a difficult path in order to celebrate differences and bring peace and equity to the world. I am thankful for the struggles that led to the triumphs, and it is my blessing and honor to share my story. This is a photo of my siblings a year and a half before my birth. 6 weeks later, on February 10th, 1966, Dr. Martin Luther King spoke on this campus for the second time.
We as students have come tonight to hear his analysis of the field in which he is most closely identified these days, the present status of the racial issue in the United States of America and around the world, and what we should be doing to prepare ourselves for effective living in the years ahead.
President Berthoff, members of the faculty and members of the student body of this great institution of learning, ladies and gentlemen, I need not pause to say how very delighted and honored I am to have the privilege of coming once more to the campus of Illinois Wesleyan.
This is my world in black and white. Thank you for this humbling opportunity to speak to you today. In sharing my story, I am part of the urgency of now. I am continuing what my parents started long ago, the fight for peace, equity, and justice. I identify as black. My birth mother is white, and my birth father is black. I have not met either of them. I am a Christian, and I believe that my journey has led me to this moment. Adopted into an all-white family in 1968, I grew up in an all-white city. When I would look in the mirror as a child, I knew that I was different. My skin was darker, my hair was curly, I had blonde hair in my arms, and I was unlike anyone else in the area that I lived. But I didn't see someone people would dislike because of those differences. I grew up in Wausau, Wisconsin, where I seldom saw anyone of color other than on TV. It turns out that my hometown was designated the whitest city in America. In a census taken in 1970, in a town of over 30,000 people, there were 4 people of color, and I was one of them. Life opened my eyes to how parts of society viewed me when I was only 8 years old. It was a sunny Christmas break day just like today in 1976. I was walking right here, pulling my sled as I had done many times before. All of a sudden, a 12-year-old boy tackled me, knelt over me, jammed snow in my face, called me words I will not repeat, and told me I didn't belong. I was 8 years old. From that moment forward, my childhood was forever changed. I always knew I was different than anyone else in the area as the only person of color, but when I looked in the mirror prior to that day, I never saw my skin as a source of hatred. I know this is a rhetorical question, but where does a 12-year-old learn this type of hate? I am not claiming to be a victim. I am sharing my story to educate those who might listen and bridge a gap for a more equitable world. This is what my parents showed me by their love and their actions. Those trees were not here in 1976, but I was, and a part of me will always be, as it allows me to talk about my privilege and marginalization all in the same breath. My parents gave me an opportunity in life as a black child in white America. My world in black and white is the story of my life, the book I haven't written yet. Where do I begin? How do I start to explain so many things that I've been feeling my entire life but never put pen to paper? How can I tell you what it feels like to see the world through the lens of a white and a black person, all while experiencing it through the skin of someone who's black? How can I tell you what it feels like to have the worst of racism and the best of equality? I have seen and felt America from many angles and lenses. I'm not an expert on race relations, but my real life experience is something that I wish everyone could feel as they reflect on race in America. I had 2 loving parents. They were necessary pioneers far ahead of their time. My mother was a nurse. My father was a high school teacher. They had 6 children before me. When I arrived, my incredible siblings didn't blink an eye, just another child in the family. From 1972 to 1990, at least one of us was in college. This is me and my father in the fall of 2015. During fall break, I took a drive back home to interview him. I never knew the story of why they chose to adopt. My mind was racing and flooded with questions as I made the 5-hour trek north. It was 2 years before he passed away, but I had so many questions, and I'm so glad I took this opportunity. Here's a clip of me asking him why they wanted to adopt. You've got 6 children.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide that you wanted a 7th child, and how did that all come about?
I didn't.
Where was he going with this? Here's my father, the man who taught me how to read and write, attended every athletic contest from high school through college, and even came to this campus when we hosted nationals in 2000. What did he mean he didn't want to adopt? But that started what was going to be quite possibly the most meaningful 4 hours of my life. As the late afternoon changed from dusk to darkness, my father took me on a journey and shared things I never imagined. I didn't need to ask any more questions as he spoke for 4 hours, and I listened to how he had unwittingly prepared to adopt his entire life. The year was 1946. My father was in the Navy stationed in San Francisco. He and some fellow sailors were returning to the base after a night of heavy drinking. As the sailors rode the trolley, my father noticed a black man wanting to get on the trolley. This is his recollection of that evening.
One night, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were all beyond hope and trying to get, waiting for the trolley and acting like a bunch of dumb shits. And the trolley came, and we all got on and were singing and acting like damn fools. And all of a sudden the trolley stopped. Well, we didn't think anything of it, to pick up somebody else. Well, it stopped, and then it started out again. And I said, hey, you forgot a guy. He wants to get on. The conductor never paid any attention to me, but then he stopped. Well, then the guy started out for the thing, and I noticed he had a lunch bucket. It looks like he just got off his shift and he was going home or something, or going to his shift, I don't know what, but he wanted to get on the trolley. And this guy wouldn't let him on the trolley. So this went on about 5 times. And we all went up to that conductor, and we physically threatened him. You stop this son of a bitchin' thing, and you let that guy get on here and take him where he's gotta go, or we'll throw you off this goddamn thing and we'll take him home.
At that moment, my father's journey as a civil rights activist began. After the Navy, he enrolled at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and studied history and English. He became an Abraham Lincoln encyclopedia and a civil rights activist. He held a master's degree in history, English, and biology. I took 3 of his classes in high school: exposition, American literature, and advanced composition. C+, B+, A-. He actually failed one of my older brothers. But it was in his classes that I first started to learn to think critically. I would love to go back in time and absorb as much as I could from his classes. As my father continued to share stories into the night, it all came clear to me how his life experiences prepared him to become my father. With 6 children already, adoption wasn't on his mind. But it was on my mom's mind, and this is what happened when she brought it up.
I'll say it clear, I'll state my case, of which I'm certain.
I said, we've got 6 kids now. Well, how are we going to do this? I said, we don't know what we're getting into. We don't have any money for it. And she took it just so long, and she turned to me and she said, you know, you talk a big game, a big talk, you're into this social concern thing. You're something at the top of the list, and you're turning away from it. If that isn't hypocritical, I don't know what is. Well, what the hell are you going to say to that? Because that's what it was. It was hypocrisy.
I did it my way.
This is me and my best friend in 1984. He went to 5 different elementary schools in as many years. The last one, he was the only white kid in the school. It was an incredible twist of fate that I went to an all-white school and he moved to Wausau, Wisconsin, and we have been best friends since 1980. He lived with his mother and they were poor. My dad became a father figure to him and he spent many nights at our house. He took my dad for an English class. Here he is speaking at my dad's funeral.
But I probably learned more of that C- than any A or B that if I ever got an A in high school. But yeah, definitely learned a lot from Frank. Critical thinking was mentioned earlier. That's one of the big.
This is my favorite photo. This is shortly after the sledding incident and just before I had met my best friend. My dad taught me to see color. Color is beautiful. That doesn't mean I go around consciously looking at others and thinking, oh, that's a black person, or oh, that's a white person. If life were only a workplace, and it isn't, where our entire purpose was just to get along and just to be cordial, but not learn anything about each other, life would be boring, it would be dull, it would be mundane. Life would be a sterile environment in which we're not allowed to see the colors of culture, the colors of the world, the colors of people. When you see a beautiful sunrise, it can be filled with infinite, ever-changing clouds. What if we only saw the world in black and white? There is so much incredible culture in the world, so much history, so much uniqueness, so much to acknowledge, to celebrate and enjoy. This past summer, my son had 2 friends over for dinner, one from Lima, Peru, and one from Congo in Africa. This was a moment that I wish my parents would have been able to see. It was a moment that because of how my parents raised me and how we have raised our kids, that it was just some young men from all over the world sitting as friends, as equals, and thoughts given to race were only that of respect and wanting to learn and know more about each other. My parents showed me by their words and their actions that the love of humanity is a lifelong process. It must be intentional. Knowing a black person or having a black friend is an all too familiar theme of thinking that one is anti-racist. My parents prepared for 42 years to adopt, and I am fortunate to receive their life's work and love. My formative years in late childhood had joy and wonder, but it wasn't all roses. I remember it clearly. I was 15 years old. I was at an all-star baseball tournament and we were staying at a campground. A few of the boys had some marijuana. I had never seen it before. I was scared out of my mind. They lit up and passed it towards me and one of them said, "Hey, you're black. You must have done this." I grabbed it, I looked at it, turned my head away, didn't say a word, and passed it to the next person. Before my first start in high school basketball, the head coach pulled me aside and said, "I need you to keep your playground moves within the offense." I grew up in the same city as all the other kids, but I knew exactly what he was talking about. I should have been the starting quarterback on our high school football team, but the head coach was not going to have a black kid running his offense. Our high school used to have what was called the American Legion Gold, Silver, and Bronze Award given to the best athletes in the school, regardless of gender. The gold was given to a baseball player who was first team all-conference. He was also a starter on the basketball team, but no other accolades. They handed me the silver, despite being all-state in football, all-state in track, and all-conference in basketball. I knew it at the time, but it was confirmed that it was because I was black that I didn't get the gold. I was set to go to a homecoming dance with my girlfriend, but her father found out that it was me and he decided otherwise. I share these to illustrate an essential question. Where do all these assumptions about me come from? When I got to college, it was more of the same, but please keep in mind, it was more the exception and not the rule. But why should anyone go through that? College was the first time I was around other people of color. and it was wonderful. I was able to assimilate well because of my experiences and what my parents taught me. Going to a black barbershop for the first time was the coolest thing, something that did not exist in my hometown. My college football coach was Roger Herring. He passed away in 2021. Herring won 3 national championships and 15 conference titles. He was named to the ESPN Top 150 Coaches of All Time. In my freshman year, I sprained my ankle during the second week of practice. My first game back was at Saginaw Valley, Michigan, a Division II program. It was a 10-hour bus ride, and since I was a freshman, the upperclassmen chose their seatmate. 315-pound Larry Harlow chose me. I was smashed against the window for 10 hours. I ended up earning player of the game, and I got to fly back on the 6-person G. Heilemann Brewery plane. The G. Heilemann Brewery had the world's largest 6-pack, and the owner followed the football team. It doesn't exist anymore. But I went from Larry Harlow to riding in a plane over Lake Michigan. I sat directly across from my head coach, Roger Herring. He asked me to grab him a beer and to grab one for myself. I didn't say no. We ended up having a few more, and as we were getting close to the Mississippi, I could feel my bladder starting to get uncomfortable. This plane didn't have a bathroom. It wasn't my first time drinking, but the combination of not eating, being on the plane, and the whole situation, I was flat out drunk. When we landed, I did the fastest bent over duck waddle to the bathroom, but I could see Coach Herring now. He was smiling as we kicked back old style beer. How lucky was I? He asked me about my parents and my childhood, and we established a special bond at that moment. Coach Herring saw me. He saw who I was and helped me with opportunities beyond football. When I was younger, I would often hear microaggressions like, "Nice tan." As I have aged, my skin has become lighter, which is common for people of color. But I'll never erase the damaged look on the face of a college teammate who told me that he wished his skin was as light as mine. Many people of color bleach their skin, which on the surface may seem trendy or normal today, but there's an ugly history behind this. And it's the complete opposite of getting a tan to look and feel good. On many levels, it's to escape the negative connotations surrounding being too dark. There's a song by Depeche Mode called "People Are People." Those lyrics were, "Can't understand what makes a man hate another man. Help me understand." In my 53 years of living this experience, I know why things are the way they are with racism. But it doesn't mean I have to accept it. On a human level, I refuse to accept it. I can't internally accept it because at the core of my being, it doesn't make sense. Here's a critical moment in my history. I take you back to 1969, a year after I've been with my family, but the adoption had not been finalized yet. After my father's attorney spoke, the judge looked out in the courtroom. My mother was in tears, my sister Susan, who was 11, holding me at the time. The judge said, "This community isn't ready for this. Where is the father?" My father wanted to punch the judge in the face, but he calmed himself. And I quote, "There was too much at stake." Here is his recollection of that moment.
Because that bastard came in there fully ready to say no. And I'll tell you, I hadn't in a long time wanted to reach over and smack somebody in the mouth with all my might like I wanted to do that. And I calmed all of that, and because there was too much at stake, I looked out there, and I think Susan was holding you, and your mother was there, and this goddamn Judge Dean came up with every cockamamie goddamn argument why this wasn't going to happen, and I never had anything in the tone of my voice or what have you. I kept absolutely reasonable, and informed.
I paused it here because in just a moment you're going to hear my dad's grandfather clock. It will make it kind of hard to hear him, but it's a really cool moment, as if to say this moment in time is echoing all the way to now.
Reasonable and informed, and I brought him all the evidence in front of all those people in the courtroom. You know, he asked me questions. Well, this community isn't ready for this yet. And I said, well, well, as a person of the law, as a lawyer, especially of the northern part of this country, you must realize that we've been ready for this from the beginning of our country, when Thomas Jefferson penned the line, all men are created equal. Why shouldn't this human being have an equal opportunity to come here and go to school? Then he went on to something else and something else, and everything he said I met full bore, head on. And then he picked up the folder, and I thought he was going to say motion denied or something like that. But he slapped it down. He said, well, he said, I'm opposed to this. But he said, I suppose if you want to do it, we'll have to allow it to happen. Oh God, there was a cheer.
My father studied history. He knew Jefferson. He knew Lincoln. He knew so many more. Some today say that Jefferson is taken out of context, but my father chose those words in 1969 for all to hear. All men are created equal. For many years after college, my dad would send me a book on my birthday with a handwritten note. In the book titled Charles Darwin, he wrote, I hope you will find some time to become acquainted with Darwin, one of the great intellects of all time and much misunderstood. He sent books including The Freedom Flyers on the Tuskegee Airmen and the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, a must-read to make the connections between the horrors of slavery and the path to equality. One year for my birthday, he bought me a subscription to the Smithsonian Magazine, and he wrote, never stop your liberal arts education. He often challenged me to go inside myself and to become my own thinker. He would say that Socrates said so, and that Emerson said so, and that Lincoln said so, and all the great thinkers said so. And once you do that, there are endless possibilities. Near the end of my interview, my father told me what it meant to he and my mother and what they had hoped would happen.
Legitimate reason for what I did and who I am. And I think that we did right by you. And by the way, whenever anybody brings it up, we remind them that we've always felt that you did more for us than we did for you. Now that I can say without any reservation. And your mother is just fulfilled in that she feels that you've just been a blessing to us. And we hope that you will take that to your students and your children. And from all I can see is that's what is happening. That's what has happened.
When I teach a cycling fitness class, I try to make it a learning experience. I choose songs that have some historical meaning, such as What's Going On by Marvin Gaye.
You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah.
The song about anti-war cries and police brutality stemming from the Watts riots. In my coaching theory class, I have roundtable discussions on race, racism, and social justice. I strive to have the students leave the course understanding that coaching, at least to me, is so much more than objective results. I bring much of what my dad taught me about critical thinking into coaching. I love being creative when I can and doing my part in helping send thoughtful and informed young people into the world. Before I conclude, I'd like to share a few interesting facts about my family. My sister Susan was a staff photographer for Cesar Chavez and part of the ground movement for the United Farm Workers. This photo is from Chicago, 1976. And here is a clip of her safely carting me around on her banana seat bike in 1969.
Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right.
DeRay Mixon, the author of The Other Side of Freedom, the best-selling book about Ferguson, Missouri, officiated my nephew's wedding. My cousin, Teresa Elgers, now Teresa Kaepernick, adopted a young boy 19 years after my parents adopted me. You may have heard of him, Colin Kaepernick. Being a successful athlete requires muscle memory. You must learn it. You think about it until you don't have to think about it. Many times you get knocked down, but the more you practice it, the greater your chances for success. Effective coaching and teaching require the same patience and diligence. Here's a video of two former athletes, one from 2000 and one from 2018, both national champions in the long jump. And here are these two athletes together, nearly 20 years apart in graduation, but together as titans. This is a photo of two women who were part of a national championship relay. Janina Taylor, now Dr. Janina Baker, was named 2020 News Gazette's 40 Under 40 Women of the Year. She helped pass a resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. The urgency of now is about bringing people together. With our country being fed so much disinformation, the divide over the past few years has become like the Grand Canyon. Black and white are what society teaches us. A famous philosopher once said, "We must unlearn what we have learned." There are many parallels between muscle memory as an athlete and daily life. For example, if you want to combat racism but are not sure how, it requires practice. There will be challenges along the way, and it won't always be easy. But if you keep your focus and implement strategies to practice them, it becomes who you are. My world in black and white steps outside the bounds of society to see the spectrum of all colors. A story that began when two empathetic and educated people found unusual courage to help provide opportunity. My parents taught me to recognize the difference between opportunity and privilege. They showed me how to view situations from outside myself. They embodied the beauty of humanity. They were not colorblind. They fought institutions to expand horizons, including their own, with many struggles along the way. When I see these trophies, I see my parents. I see Coach Herring. I see opportunity. I see Dr. Martin Luther King. When I see my wife, I'm so thankful for the fight my parents went through to get me. Because my parents were anti-racist, they gave me an opportunity at life. And because of them, my daughter was born and graduated from Illinois Wesleyan. Because my parents knew the urgency of now had always been, I have had the honor to coach many athletes, including my son, who is a current student athlete here. Within my father's words, there's a common theme that connects all the disciplines where education has no room for something as vile as racism. A few days ago, I had a Zoom meeting with Manil Bopaya. She's the founder and principal consultant for Brevity and Wit, a strategy and design firm with a focus on making a more equitable and inclusive world. Her book, Equity, details ways to make the greatest impact on organizations through equity. After hearing my story, she pointed out that having privilege does not isolate someone from racism, but being able to recognize one's privilege is important in leading in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. She reinforced what I've been feeling my entire life, but I've never really shared it publicly until now. Many organizations are not ready to tackle the real work needed in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If the urgency of now is our theme, we better roll up our sleeves and get to work. My parents knew the urgency of now in the 1960s. This is my world in black and white.
Didn't you love the things that they stood for? Didn't they try to find some good for you and me? And we'll be free someday soon. He's gonna be one day. Anybody here see my old friend Bobby? Can you tell me where he's gone? I thought I saw him walking up over the hill with Abraham and Martin and John.
Well, I was quarantined when I found out we were going to be virtual, so it gave me a little bit of time to get more creative with it. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Although I know that you can't see it or hear it, would ask that you would just give Coach Shu a round of applause. Thank you so much. Everything happens for a reason, whether we want it to happen or not. This program, this kickoff, was initially supposed to happen in person. We had it all planned out, a great committee. We had it all planned out on marching from our chapel to the Young Main Lounge and doing this in person, but it just so happens that it worked out the way it was supposed to work out. Your words, your vulnerability, your lived experiences. I'm certain that there were some people in the audience that had something in their eye. We're virtual. I'm sure that someone was in the kitchen cutting some onions. So we thank you for your words. You are a true example of exemplifying what inclusion means, exemplifying what equity means. Because a lot of times we go into our places of work and interviews, and we use these buzzwords, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and don't really understand the true meaning and the essence of what it is. And your story, I think I got something in my eye right now. It's some dust in my office right now. But your story really gave us an opportunity to do what we were intended to do on today, this week, and that is to reflect on the works of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to reflect on the works of what our community and our world have done since then, and since the beginning, in hopes of continuing to create, again, a world where everyone can get along and to love on each other. Our campus is truly blessed to have you as a family member, as a colleague, as a friend, as a coach, as a teacher. I do forgive you for beating my alma mater, Saginaw Valley State University. That story that you told us, it put a smile on my face. But thank you so much. And also thankful for our committee, Dr. Jessie Dixon-Montgomery, co-chair, the hard work and grind of Charlotte Brown and Jai, our director for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Our chaplain, Walter Wilkschek, Kyle Griffith, our Director of Residence Life, Dr. Chisato Kojima, and Londa Dunlap. And a special thanks to President Nugent, our student leader, or one of our student leaders, Nile Doucette, Student Affairs, the Dean of Students Office, and the countless phone calls and emails sent back and forth to our marketing and communications department. So we want to thank as many people as we can. And if I may have forgotten your name, please just forgive me. But again, everyone, we urge you to take some time today. Take some time this week. We have tons of events. We have tons of events that are ahead for us. And we just want you to take some time to reflect on the works of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and gather and come together and figure out what else or what it is that you can do to continue to build with our campus and our community in the spirit of inclusion, equity, diversity, and equality. We do have a few more events for the remainder of the week. Charlotte, I'd like for you to speak to our teaching that's going to be at the Hanson Center on Wednesday, and thereafter we'll close out and bid you all adieu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, this Wednesday is our annual teach-in event where we will welcome Dr. Timothy E. Lewis from the Political Science Department at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. That will be an in-person and Zoom event. The link is out there. You can sign up to be in person. It's going to be another dynamic event. And on Friday, ODI will host its first Sankofa program. Sankofa is a West African word meaning go back and get it. So we're going to go back and look at our history, look at the accomplishments of our students and our staff members and faculty members, and we're going to take those forward, take the spirit of that forward through the semester and celebrate and go in community. So again, that will be virtual and in person on Friday in the Vineyard Room, and it will be on the ODI website, and links will be out there this afternoon. And if you ever have questions, of course, you could always contact any of us to get that information. Thank you.
Thank you, and charge it to my head and not my heart. But all of this would not be possible without our technology. So we want to thank Rick and Curtis. We want to thank our ITS for assisting us in moving forward and for the rest of our events this week. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Take care.